Hello, it's me, Phil Thatch. Every year, my family and I go to Walt Disney World, and mostly what we do at Walt Disney World is ride rides and see shows and eat great food and have a good time. But I always try to sneak in a little bit of photography while I'm there. And this year, I took my OM System OM1 Mark II and the 8 to 25 f4 Pro lens, as well as the 40 to 150 f4 Pro lens. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the photos I made with the 8 to 25 f4 Pro, which in full frame equivalence is 16 to 50. We started out at the Hollywood Studios theme park. We rode this roller coaster right here, which is called Slinky Dog Dash, early in the morning. And my daughter and her husband got there a little later than my wife and I stood right here. We had already ridden it, but my daughter and her husband hadn't ridden it yet. And I stood right here and made a photograph of them on the coaster coming over the first hill. So this is at 14 millimeters with the 8 to 25. This is 1/3200th of a second, wide open at f4. ISO is 500, and there's the Slinky Dog Dash coaster. It launches and goes up this hill, and this is the first drop on the coaster. And right there is my daughter and her husband having a good time on Slinky Dog Dash. I didn't use the camera anymore until sunset. That was early in the morning. And when sunset rolled around, I came down here to the part of the park called Sunset Boulevard, which is modeled after Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. And the first shot I made was of this building right here. I liked the way there was still some golden hour light on the top of the building, but you could still see the neon lights were lit, and you could still see them illuminated brighter than just the wall of the building. A lot of these buildings on Sunset Boulevard are just shops, but they're designed to look like theaters, and this one is the Carthay Circle. I like the color in the clouds, and I like the leading lines of the palm trees going down the street. I shot this shot vertically. This building is fairly tall. I shot this shot vertically and cropped off the bottom, tried to make sure to hold the camera straight in terms of forward and back and left and right. And to do that, I ended up with lots of just street in the foreground. So I cropped that off and made it a square crop. This is 10 millimeters, 1/100th of a second, f5.6 and ISO 200. My next shot is of that same building, but I've moved over to the left a little bit, which gave me a better angle on the building, I thought, but it took away some of the leading lines of these palm trees, which I didn't like that part as much. I still love the clouds in this and the golden hour light on the top of the building, and you can see some neon lights in some of the other buildings down the street a little bit better. You can even see the top of the Chinese Theater, which is way down the street and around the corner and up a pretty good ways. I photographed it later. This is 9 millimeters, 1/100th of a second, f5.6 and ISO 250. Next, I walked down the road just a little ways to right here, and this is the Majestic Theater. Now they look like theaters, but they're actually shops. You can go in and buy stuff. This is the Majestic Theater, and just to the side of it is the facade of another theater, and I photographed both of these. The sun is setting here at Disney's Hollywood Studios theme park, and I've been making some photographs using the OM System OM1 Mark II and the 8 to 25 of various things here on Sunset Boulevard, including the Majestic Theater here in the background. Let me show you some of those shots now. This is kind of a wooden box right here, and there's another one right here, and there was one on the other side of the street, and I was leaned up on that. I had my elbows on it to help me keep the camera steady. This is 1/125th of a second, f5.6 and ISO 250, 8 millimeters, which is 16 millimeters full frame equivalent. I love the color in the clouds in this and the color of the sky. And I love that you can see the neon lights, even though they're not horribly bright, because there's still a lot of light out. But I photographed this a little bit later during blue hour. This building was my favorite thing to photograph, and I think this may be the first time I've ever photographed the Majestic Theater. Really cool. Now this person right here is a Disney PhotoPass photographer, and they'll take pictures looking down the street of person standing about right here with the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror in the background. I didn't photograph the Tower of Terror too much on this trip. So we'll look at another photograph of this building a little bit later. And our next photograph is of this other theater, which is actually the same building. And I took this from just around the corner, and here it is. This is another shot that I did vertically because I couldn't get this in the picture while holding the camera level if I shot it horizontally, but vertically, and then the bottom cropped off and left me a square crop. This is 8mm f5.6, 1/125th of a second, and ISO 400. Love it. The Legends of Hollywood Theater sparkle on Sunset Boulevard. I thought it looked really good, and because the main walking path is here, I caught a break and have almost nobody standing in front of the theater, which is pretty cool, although there is somebody walking out of the theater, which I thought looked good. And you can see this is the front of the theater that was in the last picture right over here. Really happy with these shots with the OM System 8-25 lens. So next I came down to the end of Sunset Boulevard and got on Hollywood Boulevard and came all the way up here. I walked around this raised up area and stood about right here and photographed the front of the Chinese Theater, which is modeled after the Chinese Theater that's actually in Los Angeles. And it's just a facade for the Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway ride. And that ride is, this huge building is where you are when you're doing that ride. But the facade and entry is right here. And here's my photograph of it. Now on this shot, I did it vertically at 8mm, and I wasn't able to get far enough back to shoot the shot in a level way. So I just embraced the lines not being straight and pointing up and towards the middle in this shot. And it took me a while to get so few people in front of this because, like I say, this is the entrance to that ride. And I love the neon lights right here. Lots of detail in this. And I thought it turned out really nice. This is 8mm, 16mm full frame equivalent, 1/80th of a second. It's getting darker, f5.6 and ISO 500. On these shots, I had automatic ISO on and I was controlling my exposure with exposure compensation, and I would turn the exposure compensation down to the point where I wasn't overexposing the brightest part of the scene, which in this shot is probably the neon lights. Then I walked back down the street and I came over to Echo Lake, and I walked all the way around it. I had an idea of photographing this ship, which is actually not a ship. It's actually the Dockside Diner, but it's made to look like a ship. And I came down and I walked around. I made some shots of it from here. There's a dinosaur here. And I made some shots of it from here, but I think the shot I'm going to show you, because I made several shots and I'm only sharing the best one. I think the shot I'm going to show you was made from right around here. There's a railing that goes around this lake, and this is, from this satellite picture, you can see the pipe that runs across to a fountain that's right here. So here is the Dockside Diner. You can see where it says Dockside Diner. The entry is on the other side, but I thought it was nice. There's this show building over here, which has some nice neon signs. The lights are bright enough to where you can see them pretty good. This is backlit, so I had to raise the shadows quite a bit. This is handheld, and I didn't have anything to lean on for this shot, or maybe I leaned on the handrail. I probably leaned on the handrail. And this is 1/15th of a second. There's no vibration reduction or image stabilization in the 8-25 lens, but the camera does have in-body image stabilization. And I was using electronic shutter with a relatively fast frame rate, and I shot 3 or 4 shots in a row and hoped that one of them was steady enough to be presentable, and this one was. This is 1/15th of a second, f6.3. I probably could have stayed at 5.6 for this and been just as well, but I wanted this building in the background to be perfectly in focus too. ISO is 320 at 1/15th of a second, and this is 19mm, so it's 38mm full frame equivalent. Pretty happy with this shot. Almost overexposed the light that shines on this fountain. I wanted the super slow shutter speed to get some slick look to this fountain instead of kind of a frozen look to this fountain. And it turned out pretty good. It was continuing to get darker, and I went back to Sunset Boulevard, which is right over here. And I stood probably right around this area and made a photograph of this fake theater. So let's take a look at that. This is the Beverly Sunset. It's another shop that is designed to look like a theater. It took me a while to get a composition that I like. This is another shot that I shot vertically I don't have the theater perfectly centered because I wanted to have these palm trees not cut off. This is an 8mm shot that I shot vertically and cropped the bottom off to make a square crop. This is 1/40th of a second. I'm still at f6.3, and this is 800 ISO. I like the way it turned out. You know, I would take these shots and I would wait while people crossed until there weren't so many. So this is what it looks like when there's not a lot of people in front of your shot during operating hours at a Disney theme park. And I kind of like having the people in it. It kind of adds to the story. Although I would also love to make this shot when nobody's there. But if nobody is there, the park would either be closed or close to closed, and it would be pitch black instead of having this beautiful sunset type sky, which I like better. I continued to concentrate on that side of the street, and I went all the way down here and stood somewhere in this area and made a photograph of the Sunshine Day Bar. And I did it at an angle to where I also had this building, which is Anaheim Produce, in the shot. And I did it at such an angle that I had Sunset Boulevard going all the way down here to the huge Twilight Zone Tower of Terror ride that's right here. So this shot turned out pretty cool. Let me show it to you. So there it is, the Sunshine Day Bar where you can get some juice, and the Anaheim Produce building. And we're looking down the road to way in the distance is the Hollywood Tower Hotel, which is the building for the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. This is 9mm or 18mm full frame equivalent. This is completely handheld. I didn't have anything to lean on in this shot. And this is 1/25th of a second. f4 ISO 800, not 1/125th, 1/25th. And that, even at that slow shutter speed, I'm still at ISO 800. Really happy with the way this shot turned out. Just beautiful. It took me a while to get this composed, and I even had to kind of work on it a little bit more with some slight cropping here and there to get it just how I thought it looked its very best. But pretty happy with this shot. We got the leading lines of these lights going down the road and leading lines of these buildings going down the road, and they're all pointing towards the Hollywood Tower Hotel, which is kind of rule of thirds in the shot. Pretty happy. It's getting darker, and I came back down here to the Majestic Theater once again and made the same shot just with less light. And here it is again. I was leaning my elbows on one of these wooden things, except for this one's on my side of the road. And you can see the PhotoPass photographer here is working, and they'll use a flash which will light their subject, and you can see this girl is posing for the picture, and the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror will be in the background. So that's kind of cool to see a working photographer. And I liked that my slow shutter speed of 1/25th of a second has blurred this family going down the street with their kids in a stroller, but not everybody's blurred. These people who were walking pretty quickly are blurred, but some people are pretty stationary and they're not blurred. I love the blue hour sky, and I think the blend of the lighting inside the building, it's not too bright. The neon lights are not too bright. It's kind of a perfect shot. This may be my favorite non-wildlife shot, and you'll see the wildlife photos from Disney World in a different video. Probably my favorite building photograph of our entire trip to Disney World. This is 8mm, 1/25th of a second. I'm wide open at f4, and my ISO is 250. So that turned out really good. Really happy with this shot. Next, I went back down Sunset Boulevard, and this little thing right here is a cart that's supposed to look like a trolley car, and they do caricatures. You can come by and have a caricature drawn of yourself right there. And it was getting pretty dark, and I made my last photo from Hollywood Studios of this caricature trolley. Well, the sun has continued to go down. It's definitely blue hour now. The last thing I photographed was this caricature cart right behind me. I thought it was pretty cool. Here's the caricature trolley, and it's 9mm, so 18mm full frame equivalent. I'm still at 1/25th of a second. I'm wide open at f4, and this is ISO 640. I loved how these lights are very bright but not overexposed. And you can see this lady, she's looking at the caricature that she's received, and she's smiling as she looks at it. And here's the artist working on another one. Just really cool the way this turned out. The caricature trolley at Disney's Hollywood Studios. The next park we went to where I used the 8-25 lens was Magic Kingdom. And it's really hard to do photography at Magic Kingdom unless you stay really, really late, which we did the last time we came here. We stayed till almost midnight. But on this trip, we were getting pretty worn out before the park got empty enough to make some people-less photography, but I still made some shots. So let's take a look. The main drag of Magic Kingdom is called Main Street. And I made some photos down here at the very bottom of it. I made some photos of the Town Square Theater on this side, and then there's a fire station right here that I photographed. And I made a photograph looking up Main Street from, this is the train station. You can see the railroad track that goes all the way around the park, and this is the train station. And you go up the stairs and you can look down Main Street from a little higher up than ground level. So this is the Town Square Theater, and I made a photograph of this last year when we were at Disney World with not a single person in it, but it was nearly midnight when we did that. And as you can see, there's tons of people in this shot. This is 11 millimeters or 22 millimeters full frame equivalent. You can see the ground's wet. It has kind of rained off and on this day. This is 1/60th of a second, f5, and ISO is 200 of the Town Square Theater. Now this is that little fire hall over on the side of the lower hub, and this little door, or I should say big door, when the parades come through the park, this is where they go. Some of the parades start here and some of the parades end here, but this is the door that the parades go through. But this is Engine 71, Engine Company 71. Disney World was opened in 1971, so I'm guessing that's how it got its name. Now this side of that lower hub usually has less people than the other side, and I was able to get this shot with not too many people in it. This is another shot where I held the camera vertically and cropped the bottom off to make a square crop while keeping my lines nice and straight. 14 millimeters, 28 millimeters full frame equivalent, 1/60th of a second, f5, and ISO 160. Now the lowest native range of the camera is 200, but when you're on auto ISO, sometimes it'll go into the extended ranges, and it did for this shot, 1/160th. I probably should have sped my shutter speed up to 1/80th, and then I would have been right on the 200, which is the best dynamic range for this camera. So this photograph is looking up Main Street towards Cinderella Castle in the background, and you can see all these buildings, which these are shops too. A lot of times on these straight streets that don't have any rides, they'll be themed thoroughly, and there will be shops. So for this photo, I was standing about right here. You can see these tracks. There's a little trolley that they'll bring out, horse drawn, and I'm looking up Main Street. I thought it turned out nice. I like the cloudy sky, and I love this clock right here. I always share clocks like this with David Sailors because he's pointed out some clocks like this in some of his videos, so I always like to share clocks like this with David Sailors. This is 15 millimeters or 30 millimeters full frame equivalent. This is 1/60th of a second, f5, and once again, I have my ISO lower than the base ISO. This is ISO 125, another shot where I could have had a little bit faster shutter speed. This is the photograph that I made from the train station. So now I'm 10 or 15 feet above street level. Only thing I don't like about this shot, I like it and I don't like it. This American flag I love. It's really cool looking, but it blocks the castle. So I have kind of a love-hate relationship with this flagpole. But otherwise, I really like this shot looking down Main Street, USA. This was made in September, and they've already got the Halloween stuff out. They've got the pumpkin scarecrows and all sorts of, a lot of times, other times of year, these banners will be red, white, and blue, but in autumn, they have more fall color banners around the Magic Kingdom theme park. But really happy with this shot as well. This is 11 millimeters or 22 millimeters full frame equivalent, 1/60th of a second, f5, and once again, I should have used more shutter speed because my ISO is 100 and the best dynamic range on this camera is at ISO 200. So I made all those pictures kind of at the same time, and then the next shot I made was a pretty good bit later, and it was standing right here on this bridge. And when you stand right here on this bridge, you can get a photograph of Cinderella Castle with nobody in the foreground of your shot. So I thought that was really cool to stand right here on this bridge, looking in this direction, made a photograph of this building, and I even managed to capture some wildlife. Let's take a look. So here's that shot on the bridge. You can see some reflection of the castle. There are some people. There's a walkway over here. There are some people here, but on this rock, there's an egret of some sort. It's probably a great egret, but it's so small in the frame I can't tell for sure. But that was cool to catch a little wildlife. Now this cable, which I elected not to take out during the fireworks show, Tinkerbell, she zip lines down this cable, and it's pretty amazing to watch during the fireworks show. And I decided to leave it in just because of that fact. This is a 10mm shot that I shot vertically and cropped off some of the bottom. It is 1/60th of a second f5, and once again, I'm a little bit low on the ISO. I'm at 160 where I would rather have been at 200. But otherwise, I think the shot turned out really nice. And you know, it is a little bit of a dynamic range hit, but it's obviously not huge. The pictures still look good in the extended ISO range. I didn't take any more shots for a long time, and this is the hub. My next shot was made looking down Main Street. Here's Main Street. It was looking down Main Street towards the train station. I'm not sure if I was standing right. I think it was probably more like right here. And I'll show you that shot. This is an after dark shot. Definitely a blue hour shot here, 10mm, 20mm full frame equivalent. I love how all of these buildings all the way down Main Street have these lights on them, so it makes them very photogenic. This is Casey's Corner, which is kind of a hot dog and corn dog restaurant, and this is an ice cream restaurant here on this side. And then there's a candy store down through here. On this side, it's all shops where you can buy t-shirts and sweatshirts and just all sorts of things. And then there's the train station down at the very end of the road, and lots of people. This is handheld, nothing to lean on for this shot, and this is 1/10 of a second, wide open at f4, 10mm, 20mm full frame equivalent, and the ISO is 640 at only 1/10 of a second. My main objective for this shot was to not overexpose these lights, and for the most part I think I managed to do that, and I really like the way this turned out. Main Street, USA, looking away from Cinderella Castle at Disney's Magic Kingdom theme park. So my next photograph is of an unusual thing to photograph at Magic Kingdom. Last shot was made from here. Now we go up to the hub and over here and over here. There's a funny animatronic show called the Country Bear Jamboree right here. And just across from it is a shop called Big Al's. And I believe this is it right here. And I made a very after dark photograph of it. Let's take a look. So there's Big Al's. It's an 11mm shot, or 22mm full frame equivalent. This is 1/20th of a second, handheld, not leaning against anything. I was at f4, which is wide open on the 8-25, and my ISO landed at 640. I paid close attention not to overexpose this bright area and this bright area, and it turned out pretty good. My last shot of the day from Magic Kingdom was made right over here. This is looking at the castle from the other side. You remember earlier in the video I made a photo of the castle from this bridge. Well, this time I made a photograph of the castle standing at the entrance to this walkway, and this walkway has lights going up it, and I made a picture of this side of the castle well after dark. Let's take a look. So there we are, looking up that walkway with the beautiful lights giving us some leading lines. And there's the castle, and you can see the zip line for Tinkerbell there in the shot. And at night, they don't just put white lights on the castle. They put all sorts of blue and pink lights on the castle, which I'm not sure. I think I might prefer it with white lights on it, but that's the way they've decided to do it, and I'm sure they know what they're doing. But anyway, I'd like to see it one day with white lights on it and see what it looks like. This is 11mm or 22mm full frame equivalent, 1/20th of a second, handheld, not anything to lean against in this location. This is f4, and it's getting very dark, 1/20th of a second at 2000 ISO. I have one more picture that I made at the Disney parks with the 8-25, and this one was made at Animal Kingdom. We got there super early. Animal Kingdom opens earlier than the other parks. And we, instead of going to the World of Avatar, which will have a big crowd, or to the safari ride, we went to Expedition Everest, which had almost no crowd. And we got to ride the roller coaster several times over the course of about 10 minutes. We rode it 3 times. So that was awesome. But on the way there, we walked along this path, and there's a beautiful view from right here looking across the water. And this is seating where sometimes they have shows in this body of water. And there's rope light, string light above these seating areas. And in the background is the artificial mountain for the Expedition Everest roller coaster. And as we were coming in, it was so beautiful. And even though we were trying to get to the roller coaster so we could ride it several times, I said, I got to make a shot of this. And so I put the 8-25 on, and I made this shot right here. This is those lights that I was talking about above that seating area. And there's the not real, but still beautiful mountain of the Expedition Everest coaster. This is the lift hill right here. You can see going up where the train goes up. And I just thought it was absolutely beautiful. This is a 25mm shot, so 50mm full frame equivalent. So we've made use of the entire 8-25mm range of that lens in this video. This is 1/800th of a second, f4, and ISO 250. Now this shot was heavily backlit. As you can see, the sun is rising behind the artificial mountain. And normally in a backlit type of shot, I would probably do a high dynamic range. I would probably put the camera on a tripod and make one exposure for the sky and make other exposures so that there would be plenty of light on the mountain. But I didn't have the luxury of a tripod or the time that it would have taken to make that, because remember, we were trying to get to this roller coaster and ride. So this is all one shot. I just exposed for the brightest point, which is here, which as you can see is not overexposed. And these OM System RAW files have a lot of range because I was able to get the light nice and even on everything just by lifting the shadows and raising the exposure and all that sort of stuff. So I was really happy with that. One of my favorite pictures of our entire trip right here. This early morning shot of Expedition Everest. I especially like it because these lights are on, which later in the day when this mountain would have good light on it, these lights would be off. Be sure to tune in to my next 2 videos. I have shots with the 40-150 f4 from Epcot and from Animal Kingdom. And thanks for watching this one. Have a great day. Bye-bye.